Tēnā rā tātou, ai te whānau planting seeds. Always appreciate you guys being here, tuning in. Currently at Mahi Atua Wānanga, and the vibes are high. We're in day 4 of the Wānanga, and I'm sitting across from a kaimahi, and someone who has been through the Wānanga, someone who is seeing it from the outside, and feels the mauri of what Mahi Atua is creating. And so, Kelly Burns, nau mai to planting seeds. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm good. A little bit nervous, but yeah, all good.
Cool. We were talking a little bit off camera around your journey and how you've even navigated to being in this space. But before we get into there, just want to pass it over to you and allow yourself to introduce yourself to our listeners and to our viewers. Ko wai koe, no hea koe.
Oh, kia ora, kia ora. Ko wai au, ko whitu matarau te maunga, ko awa tere te awa, ko Hinirupe te marae, te whānau Hinirupe, te whānau tūwhake i rio ngā hapu, ko ngā te parau te iwi, no kawakawa mai tāwhiti, Te Araroa hau, ko Kelly tōku ingoa. Yeah, from Te Araroa. Everyone's from Te Araroa, hearts of the universe. Yeah, grew up in Te Araroa, spent my childhood there and moved to Gisborne for high school and have been in Te Tairawhiti in Tūranganui-a-Kiwa ever since.
Oh, that's so cool. And every time I hear Te Araroa, I just have a warm feeling towards that place, because when I moved back from Australia, there was a man by the name of Marcus Akuata Brown who just took me under his wing. And a lot of my sense of reconnection back to Te Ao Māori, but also to myself, took place over a span of a couple of years. And being to Te Araroa, been at the marae Hinirupe, have walked the paths of your tipuna tū whakairiora, have heard the pātere or the mōteatea, and so just hearing Te Araroa just has a beautiful wairua to it for myself, and can feel it within everyone who is from there. And what was it like for you growing up in Te Araroa or being within that region?
Something I've sort of reflected on later in life is how much of a privilege it actually was. Definitely something I probably took for granted as a child, you know, getting to grow up at my marae, at the futa mai maunga, swimming in my awa, being surrounded by my whānau, my hapu. Really didn't realise how much of a privilege that really was. Spent a lot of time in the ngahere hunting with my dad, you know, going to the beach, all those things you get to do when you grow up in the country. So it was amazing. It was an amazing childhood, something I really appreciate now, and sort of something I'm sad that my tamariki haven't got that. Yeah, so I don't know. It's out in the universe that, you know, my end goal would be to move home and take my tamariki home, yeah.
No matter where you go, there's going to be a feeling of being drawn back to home, eh?
Yeah.
And even when I was living away, I always knew that I would be back home. And now being home and being in a space where my whānau is growing up in the same area, but it's different because the times have changed, I've developed, and it's creating those new experiences in a way. And the other thing that I guess comes to mind when we're thinking about that is when we're young, we don't really think about how challenging life can be, because we're in a rush to get old. We want to be older than what we are, and then all of a sudden we're an adult. We get the weight of bills, not knowing what to do, the challenges, the judgment, the expectations. And so the idea of growing up too fast is real. And then when we become adults, we look at, man, that was the time. And have you had moments where you've thought about that throughout your life, or even now if you reflect on that?
Oh, absolutely. And even watching my tamariki grow, it's like, man, you just want them to know to embrace that childhood and just be able to be without all the, you know, baggage isn't the right word, but we grow up and we're influenced by so many things. I think as a tamariki, you don't necessarily have all those influences and bring all that baggage to, you know, what I carry now. So yeah, I definitely reflect. I'm like, man, I was so hungry to grow up and be an adult and, you know, be out in the world. I just wish I could go back to it. But, hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about hindsight. And I really do feel it's a good way for us as adults to look at those times, but also not be so down about where we currently are, because we can still feel into that frequency. We can still feel into the joy of what life brings us at this stage. Because when we get to the next stage, we're going to be thinking about this time. So it's trying to not get lost within that too. And the kōrero around baggage reminds me of a concept that I had heard and that I had used is around, when we are in our upbringing and going through life, we tend to fill up our bag with a lot of baggages, and that's things that we've gone through, the challenges, the valleys of arduous experiences and the left hooks from life. And we just get to a point where, man, that bag just gets very, very heavy, and we have breakdowns, we fall into cycles, we might even be in shackles at some points within our own way of thinking. Has there been times with you where you felt the bag has just been very, very heavy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so much in society, there isn't a chance to just dive into yourself. And I think especially as a wahine Māori, we're the pou for our whānau, we take everything on. For our tamariki, for our whānau, for our hapu, for our iwi. So that gets heavy, but it's also a privilege. And without all those extra baggage and experiences, we wouldn't get to where we are, eh? But that's what I love about Mahia Atua, is we get to unpack that and really dive deep into that and reflect on how it's shaped us, learning about the impacts of colonisation, which gives us so much of that baggage that I wasn't even aware of. That lots of that baggage comes from those threads from the doctrine of discovery and the impacts of colonisation. Always knowing that it's there, but not understanding the depth of how it's there.
Yeah. It's like we're already born and we've got a half full bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like there's already that disadvantage of coming into this way of being that is so different to what it was pre-colonization. And so there's already that kind of step into the experience of us unpacking things. And it takes being in areas that can help facilitate the awareness of breaking things down, because the burden can often be because we think it's our fault, because we think that it's just a me thing and we isolate. But then when we go into wānanga or around others who are familiar with the mahi, we find the similarities, the relatability, the new learnings that can then lessen that burden. And so it's not you taking things out of your bag yourself, but it's the support in the collective that can reassure us that, man, we're all carrying the same thing. And so for you coming into the wānanga, how did that work for you? Like, what was your way of coming in, and what have you experienced so far?
Like into Mahia Atua?
Yeah, Mahia Atua.
So being a nurse, I was a registered nurse in our general surgical ward for about 12 years here in Tairāwhiti. And to be honest, I went into nursing because I got pregnant at 19, and I needed a career, I needed something so I could support my whānau. So I went to nursing. It wasn't this, beautiful where I wanted to care, I wanted to nurture. It was nothing about that. It was, I wanted to be able to provide for my whānau. So I went into nursing, and then a couple of years in, that's where my desire to help and realise that all my whānau from the coast were coming in, and I wanted to be there and help and tautoko in that space. So that's where my passion for the art of nursing really came in. Had a big heart, wanted to help everyone, thought I knew what our Māori whānau needed, tried to look after our Māori patients, and just got more and more bitter trying to fight the system because it was failing our people. I was sending our whānau home to die at 40 and 50, yet the Pākehā were going home at 80 and 90 to die. But we had the same thing, so I couldn't figure out what was going on. Knew that colonisation and inequity and racism were all part of it, but couldn't articulate that, didn't know how it all wove together. So got bitter, really, bitter with the system, bitter with how everything was. And a friend came to a night shift and she told me she was leaving and going to work with Papa Mark and Dr. Dai, which I knew very little about, very, very little about Mahi Atua. And I just said, can you get me an interview? Can you take me with you? And I met with them about a week later after that conversation and was absolutely inspired by Dai's kōrero. She just really fed my wairua. It was just like, that's my purpose. That's where I want to be. So handed in my notice to the hospital the next day and have been here for the last 2.5 years. And it's been a journey. It's been a hard journey. I thought I was coming into the kaupapa to help. I wanted to help whānau. I wanted to be there and help everyone else. But one of the biggest things I learnt was I had to look at myself, my contribution to perpetuating that racist system, and that was hard. That was a really hard thing to go through, because I think as wahine Māori, we always want to help everyone else. And having to sit and reflect on yourself and your own journey and all your own nonsense, really, that was a really hard process to go through. But having the tautoko of the collective, like you say, being able to share those experiences was amazing, and it's just something I'd never change now.
Perfect to hear that, because when you're in the system, coming into a space that is a different kind of system, but it's one that works for our kind of people.
Yeah.
For our people, I should say. And did you feel the shift in Māori or the shift in the operation? Was it an obvious thing right away? Because perhaps over here you're there to support and do what is required, but here you've got space to support in different ways, and it helps you to be more reflective on yourself and your approaches. Was that a thing that was obvious for you, or?
Yeah, I think it was. Just, with our basic principles, that principle of hongi hongi te whaiwhaia and giving feedback to grow, it wasn't something I'd ever experienced in the hospital. If you were ever given feedback, it was really from a negative space, and it wasn't with aroha, and you didn't know the intention from who was giving you feedback was to grow you and make you better. So it's something we spent a real long time in Te Karahana practicing. And it's still hard now to get feedback, but knowing the intent is to grow you and make you better and reflect on yourself is, I think, something that we always come back to. And we have our karakia and our rituals to help us through that, like taku whare wānanga, checking in with that whare whatu manawa i ra tangata, and that emotional side of us and our emotions, getting in the way of us growing. Because, we can either let our emotions control us, or we can take control of our emotions.
Of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is hard. Probably the hardest whare for me in that karakia. Yeah.
We also mentioned, at 19, there was a season of you becoming a mama. There was pressure to think about how can I look after baby and look after myself. And that season, is there any more around that, you knowing that you're going to be a mama, that you wanted to be able to support? Was there any additional kōrero that you can speak into around that time for you?
Probably not at the time, but reflecting back, it very much feeds into that thread of meritocracy. So you have to go to university, you have to do well at school, you need to have a certificate or a degree to be able to provide for your whānau, you need to have a good job, and then basically you're going to be happy and live happily ever after, which is just not the case for anyone, regardless of what you do. There's always those piki me ngā heke in life.
Tika.
And that's what I love about our pūrākau and Mahi Atua, is our atua had these battles, and they were in battles, and it's easier to connect for me with the atua and the battles and the struggles they went through than it is to connect with a Cinderella story. Where you meet your Prince Charming and everything's happily ever after. It's not real. And I think so much of my life growing up was probably to aspire to those stories that we were given as children.
Man, it's cool to hear you say that, because I just heard that kōrero just now from Whaidai around the idea of you needing to go to university, of being this or being that, to provide a sense of contribution to what it is that you're creating, to the collective, to your own immediate whānau. That's a programming that we've been led to believe, and knowing that that doesn't necessarily need to be our path, that us just being ourselves and connected to our tuakiritanga, our identity, our pūrākau, is a pathway that feels like it's life-giving, but it's also one of the things that can support those around us. Has there been any experiences where you've taken lessons from this kaupapa and even from your own lived experience, where you've seen how it has supported like yourself as an individual, as a mama, as a whānau, but even towards others? Has there been any instances where support from what you've gone through has been of value or helped those close to you?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things I learned was it starts with yourself. Instead of going out and trying to be everything for everyone else, starting with yourself, starting with your whānau. So even the way I interact with my tamariki, Thai often gives the kōrero that, your tamariki give you the most honest feedback. They tell you when you suck at being a mum. They're like honest and truthful with it. So just in that space with my own tamariki, with my tāne, being able to check in with myself, know when I'm being triggered by their behaviour, and just being able to take a moment. No, that's me. It's not you. You're using your voice. I'm like encouraging you to use your voice. So just with my own whānau, being able to sit in there and reflect on myself, why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving, why I'm giving responses, and to not judge it, but understand it and catch it has been the biggest start. Yeah.
Has there been any common patterns that you've noticed in behaviours that you feel, okay, I need to pull that back, whether it's reacting, or is there a common one that you have become aware of, that you've worked on since becoming aware of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Reacting, just going straight to reacting in a negative way, shutting people down, shutting their kōrero down. And one of the things I've learned is to identify what's going on in myself, like physically. And now I can speak to it like, oh, I'm having a bit of a puku reaction to that. Or I can feel my heart's racing a little bit. I need a minute to check in, otherwise I'm just going to start, going off. So those things, and don't get me wrong, I still do it now, but it's just been able to catch it and be aware of it, not judge it, and then, try and be better moving forward.
Yeah, because that's the worst thing that we can do at times, is we judge ourselves for how we behave, and then it creates that loop, and it doesn't help with the progress of being okay with failing. It's like, I failed in this moment, let me try again. Because even when I've looked at experiences with myself and my wife, and there was a point where I was saying sorry for something, but it wasn't just the one time, it wasn't just 2 times, it was something that happened often around the same thing. And then I realized I need to stop saying sorry, because it's only making it feel good in the moment, but it's not actually me being accountable to what was happening. And so me stopping to say sorry, and me just proving to myself first and to her, was the process, and me being able to catch it, because the sorry became the additional pattern to the behavior. And so I'll do the behavior, then the sorry. And so that just got attached onto it. So just trying to disrupt that gave me a different approach to, before it even happened, I gave myself the moment to, I would usually behave like this in this moment, but I'm going to choose an alternative. And so it was a pattern disruption, which created a shift in the experience. And the thing that I noticed immediately is that she didn't even notice. Like she didn't even know the work that was going on internally. But I caught it before it became something that she would notice. And have you had those moments for yourself?
Yeah, that just reminded me we often talk about sitting in the problem, and I think of the raru that I've had with my whānau, with my tāne, and like they'll come with a problem, or I'll have a problem, and we jump straight to the solution.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to understand, really sitting in the problem, to understand the whakapapa to why it's triggering, or understand the whakapapa to the behaviour. So to go into those problems now and not be reaching for solutions straight away, just sit in it and wānanga with it. And I think with my tāne, because he's not in the kaupapa, it's something I've had to model. And now we can sit in wānanga for hours about the problem without reaching to solutions. So I love that we can do that.
But
now,
that's inspiring, because I'm very much so solution focused, and even just within this new season that I'm in at the moment, I'm catching myself doing that still. And so now that I'm aware of it, the encouragement that I'm hearing from you and being here at this wānanga is just to be okay within not needing a solution, even though my mind, the solution, we just need to do this. But really, that's not what's required in the moment. Like, of course, like there's all of this, the solutions that are out there. If you want to be healthy, do this, this, and this. If you want to be wealthy, do this, this, and this. The formulas are there. But sometimes it's not about the solution. It's about, okay, just feeling into it and not necessarily arriving anywhere. That's a total flip. That what we've been conditioned to, again, think about how we should go about things. And so I really enjoy that aspect of the wānanga, that there are always different ways to go about things. And if the objective or if the intention is for aroha, connection, healing, abundance, which is what you want for your whānau, it's being open to the uncomfortable approaches that could benefit that. What about for you and your own experience now being in this mahi for 2.5 years? How has that developed your practice? Because you're still a nurse in a way. Like, how has that developed you professionally?
So as much as I'd never want to go back to the hospital and be in that system again, I always think, man, I think I'd be such a better nurse now. There's so much in nursing school where, you know, you show up for the patients and their patients, and you don't bring any of yourself because it's not about you. And then you think, well, you know, I'm asking the patients to give me everything of them, tell me their whole whakapapa, their life story, their, you know, deepest mamai, and I'm giving them nothing back. So one of the beautiful things I love about this kaupapa is we share our pūrākau as well. It's not, there's no disconnect from our whānau. We can resonate and we can talk about that, you know, we're having the same problems as well. So being really open with our own kōrero, our own pūrākau, and being authentic. And that's been a big unlearning. I remember about 6 months in, I was like, I just wish you'd say what you thought. Like, just say it. And it's like, I've spent 15 years learning not to say it, to keep myself closed off, and it's all about the patients in that space, and it's never about you. When all our own stuff comes to the surface, they can see it, they can smell it, they can feel it. And it's just so inauthentic. So I think the greatest thing for me professionally is bringing my own authenticity to that space, and when I work with whānau.
I love the whole kaupapa around authenticity, and it's a courageous act to be authentic, because that's you just being true to your whakaaro, true in the way that you speak, true in the way that you hold yourself. Relevant to whoever's in the room. It's being okay to express that version of you. Do you have any other kōrero around authenticity, whether that's ways that you've been able to break through the things around, I want to say something, but I'll rather just hide that and just leave that. So has there been breakthroughs where you've been like, man, this is what it's like to be authentic, or this is what it feels like?
Like sitting with whānau, and I'm like, man, that pūrākau, their pūrākau is so heavy. I don't know what to say to that. Am I even going to be helpful? All these own internal narratives that I've got going on, I speak to them now. And it is. It's like, that pūrākau just really tugged at my manawa, but I'm not even sure what to say next. Letting our whānau, my colleagues, the people at Te Kurahana know I'm really anxious. I don't know what I'm doing. Practicing. So being able to practice and say that I'm practicing, whereas nursing, you always sort of, I know what I'm doing. I'm the expert. And just having that certitude about what you're doing and actually being able now to be like, I don't know where to go next. I don't know what we're going to do next, and put it on the table for the collective to wānanga that and help. So it's not all that individual, I've got it. It's that real ka mā te ariki, ka mā te tauira, and how we can work as a collective. If I've got a problem, we're all going to have the problem. I'm going to put it on the table for all of us. And then we get all those different lenses on the problem, thinking about things through our pūrākau and the momo of our atua. What would Ke Kerewai be like in this situation, or what would Whiro be like in this situation? So just getting that real different lens from everyone on the same problem. Whereas, like you said, I just spiral in my own mind and I'm only getting my own perspective.
Yeah. And if that perspective is self-destructive, it creates the spiral. But being able to be authentic, because authenticity isn't just about the higher virtues around just being full of light and being authentic is being true in the moment. It's being true in the moment. And if something's just rocked you, it's being brave enough to step into your vulnerability, to be honest. And it's those things there that add into your authentic flavor. And the cool thing about, I guess, that is there's a certain strength that comes over you to be able to be, man, this is who I am. This is how I'm thinking. This is the direction that I'm going in. And you can also support others in a more meaningful way when you're showing up as that, because you're now the example. And we all, I feel, have masks. And I heard a kōrero from a tuakano of mine that I really hold up on a pedestal at times. His name's Isaac Carlson. And we were at a wānanga one time, and he sort of shared around the mask, and he said, instead of just throwing because when you go into wānanga, you can practice being authentic. You don't need to put on a mask as much as you feel like you need to, because everyone is practicing being honest. It's encouraged. But he said, instead of throwing your mask on the ground, just hang it up on the wall by the door. And so when you leave, you can just grab it, because it comes in handy sometimes to have that sense of protection. Because not everyone deserves the best of you at times, and so having that is perhaps helpful as a tool for anyone that is listening. But what do you think about that concept?
I love that, because we spend, sometimes I think, I spend a lot of time trying to, I don't know if it's teach or sit in with people or spaces, and it's like, actually, you don't deserve my energy. It's a waste of my time, really. So just, masking it up, taking it away and going, stepping out, and I don't know, it's a tricky one, because then it's like you still have to reflect on yourself. Why am I feeling like this in this situation? So still having that wānanga with yourself or your collective. But there isn't people that deserve that time and energy and space. So and being okay with that too.
Yeah.
Not everyone's the right fit for everybody all of the time. And being okay to just leave it where it is. People come into our lives for seasons, for time, and take the learning and the growth from that and move forward.
I like how you said there's still a wānanga that happens, because although there might be spaces where we just might not have the capacity to show up as a way that is required for that space, but there's also pockets where you're able to reflect on that and be like, hey, what was it about that experience around that environment, that particular group of people that made me feel that way? And then you can go into the understanding, it was because of this. And there's also a lot of factors that play in, like what happened throughout the week, what's been going on the last month, what have I heard about this thing, and so there's reasons as to why we show up differently, but it doesn't mean to say that that's just how it is all the time. It could be just for that moment. And so you're a Mataora, you're a change agent, you know, Rangi Nui Kātika, you've been in the space for 2.5 years and you've probably seen a lot of people come into the Wānanga. You've probably even heard a lot of, even just outside of the Wānanga, you're probably in pockets where people are talking about the Wānanga. And so that must be a rewarding feeling, knowing that there's a lot of good things that are happening within the space, but you're also aware of some of the challenges that can occur as well. So what are the things that you're seeing within that space of observing, man, there's all of these amazing things that are happening, and what are the challenges in terms of people come into, and this happens everywhere, people come into Wānanga, but then they also leave the Wānanga. And so what are some of the things around that area that you could speak into?
So I've even noticed a change in our tauira coming into the Wānanga. Like, things I think are a lot more socialised on social media. We talk a lot more about the doctrine of discovery, the impacts of colonisation. So I think when I first started, a lot of that kōrero was quite shocking and quite triggering to tauira, and it just seems like there's more of an understanding of it. It's not so shocking. It's not such a slap in the face to hear those things anymore. But yeah, and then you go out and then you're back in the same system. You have this amazing week at this wānanga, and then you go back to the same system that you're in. But what I love is that we have so many mataora around the country, and it's about building that critical mass and embracing those principles and finding that collective. And we've got a big collective of mataora now. So just finding your people has been great. You know, people are connecting outside of the wānanga. There's mataora groups on Facebook where they check in with each other. But Rangi Nui Kātika, the leadership program, is just having those real mataora pou in their different spaces. And we were really deliberate in making sure we got people from all different rohe, so that we've got these pou that have really...
Anchors.
Yeah, those anchors that we really get to dive in and spend a good year with. They sit alongside us in the Rangi Parauri space. So often I think coming into the wānanga, it's like you get starstruck and it's all these amazing things in the wānanga. Being on the other side of it, there's so much mahi and so much work that goes into it, so much work that we do with each other as well. So being able to have them in that space and just, be those anchors in all the different communities is I think, amazing. And, you know, it sucks that Te Aka Whaiora was disestablished, because they funded a lot of Rangi Parauri, they funded Rangi Nui Kātika, so... But then there's also we will still just continue to be Māori, and we will still continue showing up regardless of all the nonsense in the political climate. I think there's this amazing momentum in Te Ao Māori now that it doesn't matter who's in government, doesn't matter all the stunts that they pull and what they're going to do. We're going to keep going. That momentum is too fierce now to stop.
Yeah, the momentum is too fierce now. That's a beautiful line of this. I just want to pass it over to you to whakakapi e nei kōrero, because we've had a beautiful chat. Really enjoyed the mauri of our kōrero, your story, going from Te Araroa, coming into the city, having a pepe, then also moving into the industry of nursing, realizing that there was a lot of things that weren't feeling right with you. Then an opportunity came and you crossed over into a more Māori-centric way of healing and supporting our whānau. And not only that, you've been able to not only support others, but in the space you've been able to look at yourself, which is probably within the other way of going about things. You're always put on the back burner because it's not about you. Whereas here you've got an opportunity to have space for yourself so that you can be of more service to others, because as practitioners, we ain't there to tell, we're there to example. And so we want to be able to emanate that light and that frequency, and that is what it is that you're doing. And so I just want to pass it over to you, Te Tuahine, if you have any parting words for our whānau that are listening, who may have similar stories to yours, or who might just need some kind of either kick to come into the wānanga, or anything that you want to speak into. Kei a koe te wā.
Oh, kia ora. I've never experienced a space like Mahia Atua. There's lots of, organisations or these organisations that get these Māori names, but they still have to sit in that real Western system. They're still sitting inside this Western framework. And I love it about Te Araroa Mahi Atua. We're outside of that system. So we don't have to sit in those frameworks that come from the Western whakaaro that we know continue to fail our people. So it's inspiring, it's hard, but it starts with ourselves and, challenging managers and challenging the system is all part of the mahi that we do, but it really starts with ourselves as individuals, with our whānau and what we can do in that space. And, mokopuna decisions. So what we do in our whānau, hopefully, progresses the next generations and that's, just be better for our mokopuna.
Oh, beautiful, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing that. And with that kind of intention, that kind of purpose, I feel that is what a lot of people can resonate with, particularly if you've got children yourself. If you've got mokopuna, those are our mirrors to ensure that are we doing our best to be able to provide a better future for them. But in doing so, we also provide a better future for ourselves. Because what this is an invitation for is we think that we're doing things for others until we realize that, shit, I need this for myself too. And so it's a bit of a conundrum that we go into something for others, but we realize, damn, we're the ones who need it. But those that are connected to us are the beneficiaries of us being better versions of ourselves and understanding. So, ngā mihi nui kia koe mo tēnei kōrero, and kia koutou te whānau. Thank you for tuning in. For listening. I really do appreciate it.
Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou. Boom!